So this is a little storytelling session, and I am delighted to introduce to you my friend Gautam Mukerjee. I've known Gautam 50 years now. We started graduate school together. And in all these years that I've known this person, we've been very good friends. In the intervening years when we were really busy doing family and career and all of that, through all those years, one of the things that I really, really find very wonderful about Gautam is that he's very well informed. He reads a lot. You can see the books behind him. But not just reads, his interest in the arts, in music, in sports, it's like, it's all the same. If life is offering something, Gautam has got a part in it. And very eclectic, music is, from classical to rock to jazz, you name it, Indian, Western, everything. So I asked him to come and have a little chat with us. He also tells stories very well, as you are about to find out. Over to you, Gautam.
Thanks, Malavika. So, hello, everybody. This is going to be really a storytelling session. But it's, like the Indian epics. They're going to be stories within stories. But there are 4 principal stories that I'm going to share with you. Stories which changing humankind forever. And humankind in the 21st century is becoming something totally different from the last 450 years since Galileo and Isaac Newton. And whatever's happened with Galileo and Isaac Newton, it's not that it's being thrown out, it's being absorbed. And it's a part of what's happening, but it's a small part. Earlier, it was a big part. Everything was according to what Newton said. It was mechanistic. But today we are getting into a situation where it's also a meeting of East and West at last. So how did this happen? And through these 4 stories, and how will it affect each of our lives? How will it affect our longevity? How will it affect our health and immune system? So that's what I'm going to share with you. But the 4 stories. The first 2 are basically what Malavika put out, where scientists have fought against an existing conundrum. And I'm going to share those 2 with you. And then we go to the 3rd one. And the 4th one is the mother of all stories. It is really, really massive. And it's so massive that it's shaken everything and put it into a new container. And even then people are, reluctantly kicking and screaming, going to the altar to get married to this concept. They're still not understanding what it is, but it is there forever. And it is the single biggest bridge to certain ancient Eastern traditions. And everything is coming together. So we begin with the first story. The first story, the 3 protagonists are John, Dan, and Richie. Dan and Richie are from Harvard. They're doing their PhD. And John is from MIT. This is the early 70s. You know what the early 70s were like for the West. So they all 3 come to India, and one of them go on to Vietnam to seek enlightenment. So these 2 Harvard and MIT guys come, seek enlightenment, and they're lucky. They're lucky because they go into the circle of 3 greats. So John goes to India, he does Vipassana. Then he goes to Vietnam and meets a Vietnamese monk who's, Thich Nhat Hanh is one of the greatest Buddhist monks ever. Dan meets Neem Karoli Baba, the same Neem Karoli Baba Steve Jobs went to meet, but he'd passed away. The same Neem Karoli Baba who influenced Alpert of Harvard, who became Ramdas. So Neem Karoli Baba in the Himalayas is like what Sri Ramakrishna is to the east of India. Dan spends time with him and with the Dalai Lama in Dharamsala. Richie does a lot of Vipassana and spends time with the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama is a major character in our storyline today. He's changed Western science totally. We'll find out how. So the three of them are and they're very serious. They're not the hippie kind of people who are on drugs. They're not on drugs. They do the Vipassana, they do the meditation absolutely with everything in their heart, their heads, and they feel this is life-changing. This is the 70s. But when they go back, what are they faced with? The wall of establishment. No. You can't do all this in your academics. This is, for the nutcases. This is not for the, for your career progress. So what do? Dan decides to defy the establishment. Not a very smart thing to do in those days. And by defying the establishment, he gets a lectureship in Harvard and he takes a course, The Psychology of Consciousness. Now, when he offers that course, nobody in Harvard has a clue what's happening. But suddenly, no classroom can accommodate the number of students who have applied. So they have to open the Sanders Auditorium, which is a 1,000-seater in Harvard, to accommodate Dan's class. It's a huge success. But what's the result? The result is the establishment says, this is, the fringe, and completely blacklists him, unofficially. Chinese whispers. After his PhD, Dan can't get a job. He's not offered any job anywhere in the US. No assistant professorship, not even a lectureship, because that's the power of the establishment. So what does he do? He tries a lot of things and he finally joins the New York Times as a science reporter, rises and keeps in touch. In a way, it's good for him because his mind, I wouldn't like to say it. I mean, I'm so far removed from what he's done, but something like what I do, be in touch with everything. And he, in the 90s, introduces a new concept based on developments in certain labs called emotional intelligence. Yes, we're talking of Daniel Goleman. And emotional intelligence with 5 pillars, and the main pillar being self-awareness, which in India, which in Greece has been the, the cornerstone of progress and personal evolution. Daniel Goleman is now a celebrity. His books are, bestsellers to the point of millions. He's very rich, very much in demand, but very much also a part of the scientific establishment, which is emerging, not the existing one. And he's still in touch with the Dalai Lama. Now, we come to the second guy, John. John Kabat-Zinn, after his MIT, also is not very lucky. And he opens a small clinic in Massachusetts General Hospital. Not many people go there. He's tolerated by the establishment because he's so brilliant. He's a molecular biologist. And they give him a little tiny room. And that's all he's got. And who does he get as patients? He calls them people who fall through the crack in the hospital floor. People who are no-hopers. People who his medical colleagues can't find any solutions to. People who've gone through depression, people who've gone through melancholia, people who've gone through, they're not recovering, they're not convalescing. So they're just, okay, the last stop before you throw them out. Send them to John Kabat-Zinn. But over a period of time, the success stories build up and build up and build up and build up. Today, John Kabat-Zinn, and he's Professor Emeritus of MIT, he's in Massachusetts General Hospital, and Massachusetts General Hospital and his program, which is the mindfulness based stress reduction, MBRS, has been adopted by 3,000 hospitals in the USA. All of them to salute to John Kabat-Zinn. His books are, of course, bestsellers, and he's still in touch with the Dalai Lama. But the third guy is really a game changer of the most magnificent kind. Richard Davidson. Richard Davidson was told by his guides and everybody in Harvard, look, what you're suggesting for your PhD thesis is for nutcases. Please don't go there. You'll be finished career-wise. He still persevered. And he just barely got his PhD because there were two other guys in the interview board who didn't want to give it to him. You'd have flunked after 5 years of studies in Harvard. But he managed to scrape through, no job, because it was not considered. He was trying to find out personality traits and how they can be altered neurologically through inputs other than medication, drugs, but through thought. That was reduced to, at best, social psychology. Now, social psychology is a bottom rung of the medical world, you know. I mean, the real people who are okay, just about scraping through, push them into social psychology. The smart ones go into neurology, neurophysiology. So that was denied to him. He joins a New York State University in Providence, but somehow over a period of time gets into Wisconsin, Madison, works his way, and he says he's flying under the radar. He cannot afford to take on the establishment like his two pals. They're all in touch, and Richie is still in touch with the Dalai Lama. 1992, Richard Davidson becomes director of the neurophysiology lab in Wisconsin, Madison. It gives him power. For the first time in a colloquium with over 200 neurologists around, he announces a new word called neuroplasticity. What does it mean? Neuroplasticity means that our brains, as it was thought earlier, was frozen. No, we can change our brains. We can change every cell in our brains. And we are changing the brain every time we have a new thought. We have a new purpose. We are doing certain things which are for us a major development of ourselves. We can change our brain. How do we change it? Study of neuroplasticity. But okay, because he was the director of Wisconsin Madison and they had a fantastic lab which Richie had set up, people sort of tolerated. In the late 80s, two things had happened which gave him the courage to make this announcement, you know. The two things was, on the East Coast, in New York, Rockefeller University, a guy called Bruce McEwen had done an experiment which he announced to the world, and a lady in San Francisco in Berkeley had done the same experiment on another side of the spectrum, same results, and she announced it, Marion Diamond. What did they do? Bruce McEwen put two rats in a cage, one aggressive, one submissive. After 28 days, they took out the rats, measured the brain of the submissive rat, who was under, pounding for 28 days, and they found as a result of that emotional stress, the dendrite in the hippocampus had shrunk, which really relates to memory. So, wow, just an experience changed the brain. What Marion Diamond did is the opposite. She had created, without talking to each other, a 5-star resort for the rats. It just gave them everything they wanted. So the rats had a whale of a time. And then she measured the brains and found the dendrite in the hippocampus had expanded. So what is it that they're trying to say? That our emotional experiences can change the brain. What did the establishment do? Now let me come to why the establishment ignored both these. A scientific philosopher called Thomas Kuhn wrote a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. It's a beautiful book, you know. And they say it's the most cited book after the Bible and the Kama Sutra. Now, he talks about why and how science refuses to change or changes. And he took a word from the Greeks, from Plato, which was used by Wittgenstein in his Cambridge lectures in the 1920s in Cambridge. And he brought that word into our lexicon, which today a high school student would be using in a debate, but it was not known till Kuhn brought it in. It's called a paradigm. And he defined what is a paradigm. And he said the paradigm is a set of ideas that forms in science, which then becomes a dogma. And it is instilled into everybody through the process. The process is textbooks, school books, college books, teachers in schools, professors in universities, and the people who give grants for further studies. Now, what you're doing is you're perpetuating a dogma. But the change in the dogma, very difficult. And there are three ways in which the paradigm reacts. It reacts when there are anomalies. He calls them anomalies. First reaction, ignore. As they did Dan's wonderful course in Harvard, Psychology of Consciousness, or Bruce McEwen or Marion Diamond's findings. Ignore, because they are not in consonance with what you're believing. Second, if it's beyond the power of ignoring, okay, make minor adjustments to the paradigm and accommodate. But only and only when the anomalies are hitting the walls in such a way that you can no longer ignore or make minor adjustments, then the walls come down and you adopt a new paradigm. Most business consultants of Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Columbia Business School are using the same language, using and citing Thomas Kuhn for changing a paradigm in the corporate world. We will not get there. But what happened was the hammering on the wall, where you reduce the brain to nothing but the desktop computer. There were no laptops those days. And you say the brain is a computer, nothing else. Whereas these new guys are saying, no. There is something else happening. And that something else is the mind. But that was reduced to social psychology. It was not given the honor of even being treated in the neurophysiology stage. But then 2002 happened. But before 2002, there is a process of absolute frustration, which happens in science, you know. Richard Davidson just couldn't break through. He knew it was there. He knew, but you know, science operates on proofs. And experimental science and laboratory data is critical to change and smash a paradigm. They were not getting that lab data until another Dalai Lama disciple, Francisco Valera. He's a Chilean neuroscientist, got his PhD from Harvard, and his family suffered under Pinochet in Chile. So he made his career in France. He came out with an idea for a solution, not a solution, but an idea for a solution. And he told Richie, let's go and visit the Dalai Lama. So he said, what do you mean? He said, he's the one who's going to give us a solution. So what did they tell the Dalai Lama? They told the Dalai Lama that, look, we have a problem. We have a first person and a third person, but we need a second person to unite the project. Let me explain. The first person is the observed, the meditator in the lab. The third person is the neuroscientist. But they're not talking. It's like you put two people in a room, one speaks Latin, one speaks Mandarin. What are you going to make out of the two of them communicating? There's no communication. So you need a second person who speaks Mandarin and Latin to bridge the gap and make them speak to each other. So you need a model, a methodology designed by that second person who can get into the hearts and minds of both the Latin speaker and the Mandarin speaker and make them communicate. So they asked the Dalai Lama. So the Dalai Lama says, I've got a man for you. Who's this guy? He's the key to this puzzle being opened. This guy is Matthew Ricard. Now, Matthew Ricard, as a young man, he was a molecular geneticist. He worked in the genome at the Pasteur Institute in France, which is one of the leading institutes in the world. And he worked under Francois Jacob, who got the Nobel Prize in medicine. And everybody thought that Matthew was a sure shot Nobel laureate, a sure shot. He's really brilliant. But Matthew, at a stage in life when everything was about to open for him, threw it all away. And he went to the Himalayas and became a Tibetan or became a Buddhist monk. And he meditated for 10 years, forgetting all his neuroscience work in the lab under a Nobel laureate and in one of the best labs in the world, the most prestigious labs in the world, and a sure shot Nobel Prize winner himself in the future. All his papers were that he was going to get the Nobel Prize, gave it all up. So the Dalai Lama says, he's your man. He speaks Latin and Mandarin. So Matthew Ricard comes to Wisconsin-Madison and sets up the lab and helps Richie Davidson understand how to measure what they're trying to get at, this new thing, so that they get the results to show the world. Okay? So they've done a lot of work. They've done a lot of work with Matthew, but Matthew says, I'm not the guy. You have to go to the Dalai Lama and get your guinea pig. He'll send you the right guy. Because your first experiment is going to be a path breaker and you jolly well have to get the best. So back to the Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama sends Mingyur Rinpoche, who's done 62,000 hours of meditation. He's known as one of the 20 yogis in the Dalai Lama's thing. Yogis are people who've done beyond 48,000 hours of meditation. So Mingyur Rinpoche comes to Wisconsin-Madison, given a day's rest, taken to the lab. And the lab technicians for days before that have been told by Richie Davidson that, look, we've got a very important visitor coming. For God's sake, make sure the equipment is absolutely fine. So they check, recheck, everything is sort of put into order. Green signal is given. And Mingyur Rinpoche comes, skull cap put on, 256 sensors, and told to do his meditation. I'll come to that in a minute. And the machines go haywire. And Richie Davidson says, my God, I told you guys to make sure that the equipment is okay. Okay, we stop it. They call the technicians. They apologize to Rinpoche, goes back to the guest house. The technicians spend 3 hours and they are livid. They come and tell Davidson, you've just wasted our time. Do something with your bloody experiments, but don't blame it on us. See what's going on there. The equipment is fine. Now, there is a sense of tremendous tension because if the equipment is fine, something is happening which has never been captured by the scientific world ever. So, Mingyur Rinpoche comes, skull cap, 256 sensors, and they begin the whole process. The process is very simple. 1 minute of meditation on compassion. It's compassion meditation. Stop. 30 seconds, neutral. 1 minute, compassion meditation. Stop. 30 seconds, neutral. 4 times. And, you know, the EEG and the thing scans mention what's happening in the brain through the 256 sensors. Now what happens is amazing. Rinpoche goes into a gamma mode immediately and holds it for 60 seconds. It's never been done before. What is the gamma mode? You have delta, which is the lowest cycle, 4 to 5 cycles per second, where when we are asleep. Then you have theta, which is when we are drowsy. Then we have alpha, which is our normal work day. Then we have beta, which is when we do some work with focus and a lot of attention and concentration. And once in a while, some people never in a lifetime, some people sometimes in a lifetime, you have that, what Daniel Goleman calls the aha moment. And it lasts for 1/5 of a second, 0.2 seconds. When you get, something, it might happen even when you, completely bowled over by a fantastic sunset against a backdrop of a waterfall or a, snow-capped mountain, something, a beautiful stream or a piece of art, music, listening to it, you get a gamma moment. Or you've been thinking about a problem and suddenly it comes to you, you get a gamma moment. What is this business of holding a gamma moment for 60 seconds? How can that happen? And then he comes back to it again the second time, third time, fourth time. Now this paper and this finding has smashed all the neurophysiology laws of the past and created a new thing. It's been cited over 2,000 times by neuroscientists and completely changed the way they look at neuroscience. Now the mind is an integral part of neuroscience, and the thought process and emotions are integral parts of a neuroscientific study. They were not. They were assigned to a lower strata. Now Harvard tried to do the same experiment by hijacking Rinpoche, using a lot of muscle. They took him and he flunked. He flunked all the tests. His results were no better than an undergraduate in the lab. What happened? Because Harvard didn't have Matthew Ricard and the methodology. They didn't understand meditation. It's like saying, for all of us listening today, if I say, I'm a sports person, does that say anything? It really doesn't say anything. Because your question will be, so what sport do you play? Are you playing tennis? Are you playing cricket? Within cricket, you'll say, are you a bowler or are you a batsman? Are you playing baseball? Are you a pitcher? Are you a hitter? Are you playing basketball? Are you a guard? Are you a forward? Are you playing squash? Are you playing athletics? In athletics, are you a sprinter? Are you a middle distance runner? Are you a long distance runner? So you've got to clarify. And the same thing happens with meditation. There are types of meditation, and to say you're meditating only is to say you are in sports. Now I put somebody in a field and say, play sport. It means nothing. You got to say what sport. The same thing happens with meditation. And Matthew Ricard and Richie Davidson knew that. Harvard didn't. So Rinpoche flunked. Now, we move to the second story. So I'll come back to Richard Davidson, but he's now all success, and he's completely turned the whole neuroscience world on its head. The second story is an Indian doctor in New England. He's an endocrinologist. And what he notices is that his patients, some, they have the same illness, the same medication. Some heal in 5 days, some heal in 15 days, some heal in 30 days, some don't heal. 100 patients have certain pathogen. 5 are affected and fall ill. The rest are fine. So he starts questioning that, look, if 2 + 2 = 4, why doesn't it equal to 4 among my patients? Why does somebody heal faster and somebody heal slower and somebody not heal? We are giving, we've diagnosed the illness, we're giving the same medication, but why are the results different? What did the establishment do? Shut him down. Don't go there. Because the establishment was uncomfortable. There were no answers. Big Pharma didn't have the answer. So Big Pharma controlling the entire process of healing. Don't go there. Just don't go anywhere near them. But this guy decided to persevere and ask questions. And he was also teaching. So he started asking these questions, and suddenly he felt that his colleagues were not looking him in the eye. Nobody was sitting with him in the dining table. He was all alone. And suddenly he realized that he was a pariah. He was being pushed aside. So he quit. He didn't have a job. He had little savings. His name was Deepak Chopra. And this is about 3.5 decades ago. And Deepak Chopra started coming to India and revisiting Ayurveda and Patanjali's Yoga Sutra and Vedanta. And combining Vedanta, Ayurveda, and Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, Deepak Chopra said there's a mind-body connect in healing. There's a mind-body connect in illness. There's a mind-body connect in everything. You can't remove the mind. And the mind operates with, he uttered the absolute no-no word for Western science, consciousness. Wow. It was what the three friends had said, and 2 of them were doomed in their careers. The third one persevered and came back. But this consciousness word doesn't go with medical science. It's for nutcases, parascience. But Deepak Chopra said it works. Now, he was called, in his own words, he was termed as a certifiable lunatic by the medical world, certifiable lunatic. And put in the, he said he's in the fringe. The Taliban moved in. The Taliban, of course, led by British fundamentalist scientist. You think of the Taliban, think of exact equivalent in science. Richard Dawkins, who wrote The Selfish Gene. And Richard Dawkins sort of hammered Deepak Chopra in a public BBC program. You can see it in this thing. Deepak Chopra was, unflappable, very calm. But Dawkins was getting most excited because he just wanted to pound this down into being a non-entity as he thought it was. Deepak Chopra survived. He survived and wrote 35 books. And the end of the story is Deepak Chopra and Chopra Institute are now a part and parcel of curriculum creation for the American Medical Association, one of the most conservative medical bodies in the world, who create the medical syllabus for people studying medicine in the United States of America. So the mind-body connect is now considered an essential part, thanks to Deepak Chopra, of the American Medical Association. Doesn't stop there. Second, the National Institute of Health, which is the pillar of the American medical establishment, is funding projects for the Chopra Foundation and other people who are working on mind-body connect. Third, the Mount Everest of the establishment, Harvard Medical School, calls Deepak Chopra for an annual conference as the keynote speaker. What a turnaround. It's taken 35 years. So from being in the garbage can, you are now designing the syllabus. You are now getting funding. So the paradigm has changed. And the paradigm understands that there is a mind-body connection. But it's taken 35 years. It doesn't stop there. Deepak Chopra, the last 3 books, who is his co-author, his collaborator? A person even the establishment is scared of. It's Rudolf Tanzi. Rudolf Tanzi is the head of neurology in Harvard Medical School and the Massachusetts General Hospital, holding 2 chairs. Tanzi has identified the Alzheimer's and the Huntington disease genes. And Tanzi and Deepak Chopra, Superbrain is one of them, have said absolutely the most blasphemous thing for science. They said something which a professor from University of California, Irvine, has said, Daniel Hoffman, that consciousness creates the brain. Till they said it, the concept was the brain creates consciousness. There is a wonderful interactive session between one of the Swamis of the Ramakrishna Mission, this thing, Sarvapriyananda, and Deepak Chopra, where Deepak Chopra said the Westerners are taking all our ideas. So Sarvapriyananda says, Deepak, that's wonderful, as long as they take it and adopt it. I'll give you a story about Tanzi and then move to the next one. What Tanzi did was, using his muscle power in Harvard, he called over 100 of the top neurologists in the world to Harvard for a conference. And he, being the host, wanted to set the pace. And he goes on stage, announces the conference opening. Of course, they have their regular agenda for the 2 days. But he says, I want you to do an exercise which will stay with you for these 2 days. Think of a favorite image of your mom when you were growing up. That's easy. Everybody sort of fulfills that, closing their eyes. Now, Tanzi said, my question, and keep it with you for the 2 days. Where did you park that image, that favorite image of your mom when you were growing up? Till I asked this question, where was it parked? And you can find this in the YouTube. Tanzi is saying there was a lot of dance movements with the hand by neurologists. Normally neurologists are very stiff people, but there were a lot of dance movements. So it's in the brain. So Tanzi said, no, my security head who's standing there, he can make that statement, not you. Where in the brain? Synapses, among the neurons. How the neurotransmitters are working on it? Hippocampus, amygdala, where is it? Prefrontal cortex, where is it? Where is that memory parked? They don't know. So they all, and Tanzi doesn't say. He doesn't want to commit the ultimate blasphemy. But he says it during the coffee break. He says, I think, and Deepak thinks, and a lot of people, and in my last story, which I'm going to tell you, a lot of them think that there's no memory in your physical body. Memory operates like cloud computing today. You know, I've got a Microsoft message, and I put all my stuff in my laptop on a Microsoft cloud. So it's backed up. Earlier, what did I do? Earlier, I used to have a hard disk, a SanDisk hard disk, 1 TB, and I used to put all my stuff as a backup. But today, I back it up, sitting in Calcutta on a Microsoft cloud. And I can access it anywhere in the world. I don't have to keep anything in my laptop. But Deepak Chopra and Tanzi are saying that we don't carry our memories with us. The memory is in the cosmos. Very Vedantic. But now we are going to the third story. Okay, something else happened in between which strengthened them. Maybe I'll come to that a little later. The third story is in England, in Cambridge, 1953. There's a pub called the Eagle Pub. The Eagle Pub is the second oldest pub in Cambridge, 400 years old. And one day during lunchtime, a young man comes running, absolutely tearing hurry, and he shouts in front of the entrance, I've found it, I found it, I found it. And all the diners look up at him in wonder. They think he's a lunatic. And he says, I found the secret of life. I found what creates life. And he ran off. You can relive that moment again when you go to Cambridge, when the Eagle Pub, because there is a blue plaque outside announcing that moment. And there's a blue plaque in the middle room where the two young men used to dine every day. Francis Crick and James Watson found the double helix DNA, which is the secret of life. And they got the Nobel Prize in 1962 for that. And there's two plaques in the Eagle Pub. They also have an ale called the Eagle DNA, which you can have. It's not available nowhere in the world. Now, nothing much could be done after that. 1962, they got the Nobel Prize, but they needed further work. And Frederick Sanger, one of the few people like Madame Curie, 2 Nobel Prizes in his name in chemistry, he discovered the sequencing of the DNA in the 70s. Still nothing could be done. Why not? because of data. The amount of data a DNA has. We didn't have calculators. We didn't have calculators big enough to break down that data. But the big enough calculators came in the 90s with the Cray supercomputers. And the Cray supercomputers started breaking down and number crunching. How much data? There's a beautiful TED talk which you can catch on YouTube by Professor Riccardo Sabatini in Vancouver, 2014, I think, where he explains how much data. How much data does it take to make Malavika? So he says, think of the Titanic. I mean, the size of the pen drive. He says, what would be the size of the pen drive to hold the data which creates between Malavika's two parents, the child that is Malavika? So the Titanic is about 700 feet long, 650 feet wide, 550 feet high. That's 11-storied building. Is that the pen drive? No. The pen drive is 2,000 times the Titanic. 2,000 times the Titanic is the amount of data that creates the body that is, the person that is Malavika. That is nature. Now, how do we break that down? So 2004, when we broke it down, it cost $100 million in the Shanghai Institute. But then Gordon Moore's law of doubling of computing power. So computing power is doubling every 2 years. 2014, cost of breaking down Malavika's DNA would be the same data, would be $1,000. Unbelievable. 2020, $100. 2025, when 5G is fully operational. 5G means, you can download the entire library of Netflix, the entire library, every documentary, every film in 1 second flat. In 1 second, you download the entire thing, and you will have mobile phones also to hold it, the entire library. So with that speed, it's going to be $1. 2025 is not too far away. $1 to break down every human being's DNA and understand what it's about. Now, in this, certain things have been uncovered. The uncovering of memory. They found the genetic memory when we were in IIM Calcutta, all of us, Ronjit, Oli, Malavika, Kiri. We studied Erik Erikson, 8 stages of man. Then we were told that it's 9 stages. Our mental makeup is created when we are in our mom's womb. But today we are told by the genome that we are carrying 8 to 9 generations of memory in our genes. That means 512 ancestors. And if any one of them had lost their lives in torture, death by, in warfare, rape, some horrible experience, a lot of that is still in our deep subconscious. That is what the genome is revealing. That we can, and it's only 9 generations today. By 2025, we may find out what my 4th story is going to reveal, that our genome goes back to the natural start. The natural start is what I'm going to come in my 4th story. But something else has also happened during this time. 2009, Elizabeth Blackburn got the Nobel Prize for the discovery of an enzyme called telomerase. What is telomerase? She discovered a thing called telomere. Telomere is like this little fingernail, it's like the full stop after a sentence. For every cell in your body, at the end of it is a piece of or a bit of telomere. Now, nobody in the world has ever died of old age. There's no thing called death by old age. You die because old age gradually reduces the size of your telomere till a frazzle, till it is no longer functioning. What does the telomere do? You think of your thymus gland, which is bringing out T cells. The end of the T cells, the telomeres, when they shrink, the T cells which go and combat and hit the criminals who are invading your body, the viruses, the bacteria, they kill them. But if the telomere is shortened, They don't have the ability to fight as much as the soldier with the long telomere. And the University of California, San Francisco, and Davis found out that the telomere can be increased by certain thoughts. What are those thoughts? I'll come to those thoughts. That's the end. Okay. And it's very, very interesting that we are approaching a question of, eternal life, because we are defying the second law of thermodynamics, which is entropy. We are saying we can live as long as we want to live, provided we know what those thoughts are. Okay.
Right.
So the last story is the mother of all stories, not just for this session, but for all sessions for humankind. Since time immemorial, there is no story which has the power of what this story conveys to humankind. By the way, you're not supposed to use the word mankind. It's a gender deficit. So the word is humankind. So please don't use words like mankind. They're archaic. So it doesn't take women into account. So we must use the word humankind. Now, basically, a guy called Max Planck discovers a word called quantum. Like we map the universe high above, we begin mapping what happens inside an atom. And we find that within an atom, there is a universe. And how does that universe work? The universe is crazy. And every quantum physicist has said, serious quantum physicists, that it makes you want to get admitted to a mental asylum. And if you don't have that feeling, you're not into quantum physics. Only when you're deep into quantum physics do you want to really feel that you are nuts. Albert Einstein made a comment that he spent 100 times more hours on the quantum trying to disprove it by saying God doesn't play dice, as he did with relativity. 100:1 is the time that he apportioned to quantum, but he was defeated. Niels Bohr and the Copenhagen interpretation won. And Werner Heisenberg came up with the theory of uncertainty. But we will not get into the details of quantum. I'll just give you one example because it's linked to our neuroscientists. You can find it in the YouTube, and please check it out. You can see it in animation form. You can see it in a lab form. And we were told and shown this in animation form on stage in the Indian Institute of Science long back when we were attending an international conference in cognition and consciousness. Now, the physicists who showed a picture that what is this experiment? You are firing photons, which is the smallest light particles, from a machine onto a screen. And in front of the machine, at a certain distance, you put a steel plate with 2 slits, okay? And you fire the photons. What happens? What is the pattern which happens on the screen? 2 lines, because the rest get blocked by the steel plate. Only those which pass through the slit form that pattern. Now you leave the room with the machine on. When you come back, it is no longer firing photons, which are particles. It's firing waves. And the wave, like the waves of a sea beach, are on the screen. So how come? Okay, I'm going to catch you. So you put a very powerful camera, a video camera, to catch this movement, put it on and leave. When you come back, particles. Okay, now you put the camera switch off. It is dead and you walk off. When you come back, waves. What does it mean? A lady in the audience was so excited. She said, what could it mean? So the physicist who showed us the experiment says, madam, if you know what it means, the next Nobel Prize is yours. We don't know. And Heisenberg gave the wave-particle duality concept, the theory of uncertainty. We don't know when it is a particle. We don't know when it is a wave. But what we are getting to is that all these microcosms are intelligent. They know what's happening. Because they know you're in the room, they're not, when you're out of the room. It proves that. So what happens? It's the Upanishadic concept that we are in Brahmana. The Brahman concept where the cosmos is filled with energy and we are part of that energy. And that's why the concept of what Rudolf Tanzi and Deepak Chopra are saying, particularly Rudolf Tanzi is pushing, is the origin of where our brain comes from is not 9 generations as the genome is unraveled today, but it goes back to the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years ago. After which, when the universe came into existence, there was a moment of infinite potentiality. And that moment of infinite potentiality is what each one of us hold, provided we seek it, provided we want it. Now, I'll end with the character from this play of quantum physics. One of the 5 major characters, Wolfgang Pauli, discovered the inclusive principle and the neutrino, got the Nobel Prize. Albert Einstein nominated him for the Nobel Prize. Pauli collaborated with a guy from the other side of the fence, Carl Gustav Jung. Jung was a psychiatrist. A lot of people said the second best psychiatrist after Freud, but now he's displaced Freud because of his concept of the collective unconscious, which is today very much a part of, and it's very Upanishadic, and it's very much a part of modern science, and a lot of research is being done. But Pauli and Jung collaborated. Jung had all his medical degrees. There's MD this, MD that, MD that. But he had a PhD in Eastern philosophy. And in Eastern philosophy, his main thesis was on Vedanta. Now, he's got it in his head. I mean, he's done his doctorate. He's far more acquainted with it than any one of us. And in that collaboration, they brought out a book called Synchronicity, a theory of acausal connections. And I forget the exact name. It was given to me in 1971 in IIM Calcutta by a friend, Joynto Sengupta. It was his father's book. I couldn't make head or tail out of it at that time. But since then, I've been working and working and working and working on it. And it's really one of our major passions. Synchronicity in a one-line thing is what you think, you become. You create your own path. And how conscious are you with what your thoughts are? Where are you going? If you're rigid, you're dead in terms of your path. If you're flexible, you understand what's happening. Opportunities are endless. Now, in this, what you think you become, they wrote that book, and it was, of course, the establishment threw it out. Pauli's wife wanted to burn the manuscript because he said Pauli's scientific, prestige is at stake. But luckily, it was saved. But then, it moved and moved and moved, and today it's very much a part of scientific research. The Institute of Noetic Sciences in California, which Rishita and me visited, set up by Edgar Mitchell. He's a MIT product, the 6th lunar astronaut after Armstrong. After walking on the moon, while returning from the moon, he says it can't be a random universe. And he set up the Institute of Noetic Sciences, where Dean Radin is doing work on this. But what is it that is unraveling here? What is unraveling with quantum physics? Uncertainty, chaos is the essential part of life, not the fixed mechanistic world of the Cartesian Newtonian philosophy. So that paradigm is dying. They're still struggling, but it's almost dead. And it's moving to a thing where we understand a very amorphous world, where lab measurement cannot always hold the key. And the Dalai Lama is, been a key to opening up a lot of this. But many other aspects of this is coming. The quantum physics aspect shows that it's how Reiki works. It's how energy healing works, basically. It's how meditation works. That there is an enormous amount of, you could say, energy and intelligence. And we want to draw that intelligence. Malavi will call it spirit. People call it God, call it Allah, call it Jehovah, call it Bhagavan, call it anything. But that intelligence of the cosmos, of which you're a part, And what happened in the Institute of Noetic Science is crazy. When we were walking on either side, we found posters, 5 feet by 6 feet posters of basically Confucius, Nietzsche, Immanuel Kant, Schopenhauer, Johann Kepler, Einstein, saying wonderful things, about humankind. And then we reached the receptionist, and behind her is a 10 feet by 12 feet poster. And that's the Gayatri Mantra, half in Sanskrit, half in English, a modern translation of the Gayatri Mantra, that we are all connected, the macro and the micro. The prayer is we should be a conscious part of the connection. So I asked, how come? And the lady smiled and said, that's the raison d'etre of why we exist. So this is the new world. And in this, some more changes, and I'll link it up with what is happening with the heart. And I'll close with that. You can have some questions thrown at me. The HeartMath Institute have found that, we bring down stress, and you have a normal heart rhythm, and it's good. But they say the optimum operation of the heart is a state they call incoherence. But incoherence with what? And they find that when there are 3 elements, kindness, compassion, love, the heart is in coherence. Think about it. And the heart they've discovered, not just them, but it was discovered now by neurosciences, and the new subject is neurocardiology. Neurocardiology. How come? It's because they found that the heart has 40,000 neurons sending neurotransmitters. So it's a mini brain. It's also a gland for emitting oxytocin. Oxytocin is the bonding agent, the bonding enzyme. And the heart emits that, along with others. It was thought that it was only the other glands which emitted it, but the heart emits it. And this connection between the brain and the heart is the new connection that we found. And it comes through compassion, kindness, love, which are strengthened by forgiveness and gratitude. So these are studies for scientists now. And to put this into perspective, a little bit of a joke, and it's a true story with which we'll end, and rightly in Dharamsala at the Namgyal Buddhist Studies Institute, with the Dalai Lama present and Francisco Varela, who gave the solution to this breakthrough, and Richard Davidson, who made the breakthrough. So they are displaying how the skull cap is put on and how brain is mapped to 200 of the Dalai Lama's meditators. This is 1992. They had to spend 10, because they didn't have Matthew Ricard. They spent 10 years of fruitless labor after that. But in 1992, and they put up a screen while Francisco Varela was being set up. So the monks couldn't see him. And it was a session on compassionate meditation. They were going to do compassionate meditation. Set up, the screen is removed, and the monks, all of them, burst out in laughter. They just burst out in spontaneous laughter. So Richie and Francisco thought it's because of how ridiculous the skull cap with those 256 senses looked. No, it was not that. When they asked why did they laugh, the monk said, how can you measure compassion from the brain? Compassion must be measured from the heart. That's why they laughed. It took Western science till 2018 to come to the same conclusion, that you measure compassion by measuring the heart and what the heart is doing. Thank you.